Hello everyone, welcome back to In Session with Beth and Steph. I'm Bethany. I am a speech and language therapist.
And I'm Steph. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. And today we're going to be dealing with some myths. So this episode is called Mythbusters. So it's about basically myths that we hear about our practice or about kids that's based on either speech therapy practice or occupational therapy practice. And we're going to basically debunk these myths. So yeah, should we start? Can I start? So also, Beth and I have not seen each other's myths. So she doesn't know the speech therapy myths that I have, and I don't know the OT myths that Beth has.
So we're going to go at this half blind.
Yeah.
So bear with us.
So, Beth.
Goodness.
I
hope I'm able to answer all
I want to get
things.
the whole phrase right.
Okay.
Bilingualism causes speech delay.
Gosh. Okay. I in fact did an entire conference talk on this and learning also myself. A lot of families in Dubai are bilingual, multicultural families like yours and mine. And we speak different languages. And most of the time when those families come to us for assessment, their first question is always, do you think I should stick to one language? Do you think I shouldn't use Spanish or like this? No, it does not. Scientifically, there is no evidence that proves bilingualism or exposing your kids to multiple languages at a time at an early age confuses them, especially when it's used kind of like consistently in the form, not, I'd say, how do I say this? Like if one parent uses one language and another parent uses one language, if you use it consistently to communicate functionally, that doesn't, in fact, that actually creates more neural pathways for the brain for learning. So which is why, you know multiple languages, and I'm also bilingual because that obviously did not delay learning or language at all. If there is a delay and you are in a multilingual home, it could attribute to something else. So that's something that you want to talk about with your doctor or your speech therapist. But no, the answer is no. Bilingualism or having multiple exposure to different languages does not cause speech delay.
Thank you for busting that myth.
Yay.
I love that one. Because it comes up quite often, especially in the schools that we work in.
And it's always like a first thought, because we're using different languages, that's why.
Yeah, and like, especially when teachers see it in the school, they're like, oh, but it's not their first language. Like, do they know what they should do? Do they know how to...
So there are differences between ELL, which is learning English as a learned language as opposed to a native language, and then language delay or speech delay in itself.
Yeah.
And those things for another conversation. But again, like, for example, if a child is struggling to communicate in both languages, that indicates a language delay or a speech delay. But if one child is only struggling in one language, then that's a barrier. That's a language barrier. So things like that.
That is a beautiful, you put it really well.
All right. Now for OT, and I know OT in itself is quite broad.
I'm nervous, not going to lie.
Yeah, but like it's always, because speech therapy is always straightforward.
Yeah.
And when the doctors have these recommendations, parents tend to go to speech therapy first. And I'm like, I need you to go to OT. So, and they're like, So one of the things that, especially if it's a child with a physical kind of like limitation, when we talk about Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, or just poor motor planning, like they're supposed to be doing this or jumping or anything like that. But so they go to physio, let's say, and they would always tell us, but the OT is doing the same thing. Or like physios and OT do the same thing. So why would I? Because in fact, personally, we've had parents and families like this, that I would rather go to the one than the other because they don't see the difference. Yeah. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's a tricky one to answer because there is definitely a difference between the two. And we may be heading towards the same sort of goals. We may be using some of the same approaches, like a motor learning approach, a neurodevelopmental approach, but there is a difference in terms of what your goal is, right? So if you want to put it in layman's terms, we can say physiotherapy, we're focusing more on the, how can we say, the motor ability, so that there's like a biomechanical approach to it, if you look at it that way. So there's a lot of, we are doing this to reach this sort of movement pattern. We are affecting their tonal spasticity, or whatever it is, low tone, to allow them to be able to crawl, walk, use their muscles in a certain way. Where it comes to OT, we might use also a neurodevelopmental approach, but we're looking at, we want to use this to play. Let me rephrase that, because physios also play with kids. We want to use it to reach the goal of, for instance, I need to play to learn. I need to play to develop my fine motor skills. And yes, there'll be times, for instance, there's a lot of times where I will work with kids to help them to crawl, to help them to stand, right? That's physio. That's really physio too, right? Especially when it comes to our kids with Down syndrome, who typically have low tone. But for me, I'm using more of a sensory motor approach, right? Because there's a lot of sensory processing issues there as well. So we use it as this as like multifunctional, but to be able to reach more of an occupational goal rather than a motor goal, if I can put it that way, if I can put it in a simple way. And I think the biggest reason why we work on it together is because, honestly, for a physio point of view, theirs is so, how can I say, isolated or specifically targeted, and very, where I look at it as a whole, in like, I take in the environment, I take in the task, I take in all of it. Like, if, for instance, for me, the physio will be like, we're going to work on crawling, we're going to get them to do a play activity, right? On tabletop, we want them to crawl to the table and then go into half kneel to play. When my goal will be like, yes, I want to help them to crawl, but at the end of the day, I want to get them into that play scenario as well, into that positioning to play. So that would be my goal there, and be able to actually play with the toy, right? So it's kind of a beginning and end for me that you can see sometimes with physio and OT. And it again depends on the diagnosis, where a lot of the time we will probably do both when it comes to CP and Down syndrome, because it needs to be a holistic and MDT approach, so that, not so that we can, all see the client, but so that the client can actually reach their goals a lot quicker. So that's how we differ. That's the biggest way that we differ with kids.
I like how one of the physios that we know have said this, like, for example, your goal is for the child to sit down on a table. So one of the physios says, okay, my goal is for them to physically be able to pull themselves up, sit on the table. Sustaining that sitting position for an activity, that's not physio, that's OT.
Yeah.
So because we had quite a discussion of like, okay, the child is not sitting for a long period of time. So one of the physios asked us, is it a physical reason why the child is not? Is it low tone in the core muscles? Is it not being able to, just like put their knees or their pelvis in the right angle position? Whereas, is it something with the idea of sitting on the table doing some tasks?
Yes,
so
exactly.
That's kind of like, okay, then that's why we need OT goals instead.
That's exactly it. And it's like, in our reels and previous podcasts, I've spoken quite a bit about, I look at the environment, I look at the task, I look at the person. Like, I don't look in isolation.
Yeah.
You can see almost physio getting their muscles, posture ready for engagement. But the engagement is what, like I said, like what I'm most concerned about.
Right.
So yeah.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you for clearing that for a lot of our listeners.
Okay, so Beth, my next myth that I need you to bust is speech therapy is only about speech. It's not about literacy.
What? No. No. Okay, let me just have a quick thought. Well, most of the time, parents do just come for the talking bits. Like, he's not talking, he's not saying any words, things like that. Well, the thing is, it's speech and language therapy, because we don't just do the talking bits. We go holistic on it. Like, okay, why is he not talking? First of all, let's go to why his muscles are not moving. Is he not understanding concept? There's a lot of things involved in that. Literacy falls under language, of like, does the child understand letters, symbols, and things like that? Of course, it overlaps a lot with OT because of the visual counterpart of it. But it also for speech, like there's an oral counterpart, which is like, if I say pa, does he know that this letter on the board, P, makes that sound? So that's kind of like where we start with literacy goals. And a lot of parents do come and say, oh, I didn't know you do writing. Well, we do dyslexia. So that's kind of like, it overlaps. But we don't focus much on the handwriting, the spacing between the letters, the where they place the letters together, but more so understanding sound blends, what letter makes this sound, putting that into a meaningful sentence, and then understanding that word. That's kind of like the idea of language literacy. So we have two things that we work on, which is oral language, spoken communication, and then written language, which is literacy. So that's the first part, is always the awareness of, so we call it phonetic awareness or phonological awareness of, like, if I make a sound and the child is saying something else. So it could be, it's so easy to say that's an articulation problem. He can't say f.
Yeah.
Sure. Does he hear it? Does he understand it the way that you do? Because maybe he's hearing it like pa, or he's understanding it like th. Do you know? So when they write it down, or you ask them to pick the letters or the sound blends that make that sound, it's all wrong.
Yeah.
Because that's the first step, is awareness, is understanding or comprehension of that sound, then being able to connect that to the symbol, then writing those words together. So just an example, I have one of the little girls I see does that exactly. So she can't identify fa. So at first we thought it was okay, maybe this is articulation, we worked on it. But well, we were doing spellings or like just random, letter boards. And each time it's a f word, she writes TH. And I'm like, oh, so now it's affecting literacy. Yeah. Because we didn't get to the bottom of, this was like a month of me seeing her. So previously, no one had gotten to the bottom of why she wasn't saying that sound. So that's how literacy or written language falls into speech therapy, is because there is quite, and we always, especially when they can't understand the visuals of it, that's when I go to Steph and be like, how do I make it like the visual, what do you call it? Perception of those letters with the sound perception. There's a lot of processing involved. Yeah. And in terms of written language, that's always the case. And we work sound by sound, then by syllable, then by word. It's almost like articulation, but more in that understanding of the comprehension of the sense, I think. Yeah. No, I never had to. Yeah. But again, it's more just that. It's more of like, is my child not spelling correctly or writing correctly because they're having a hard time understanding the sound that they need for the next one, or blending them together. So that's where literacy in language falls under. It's the awareness and understanding of that sound that we're trying to make them learn. Yeah.
Another myth busted.
All right. Are you ready for yours? All right, Steph. The next myth that I need you to bust is that OTs only work on the sensory aspect and the sensory issues with behavior, and not behavior on its own. Or not like why this child is not sitting, why this child is not participating in class. And then they only ask the OT for help if it's something like there's a loud sound or they need movement or things like that, but not the actual task of participating in that task. So.
Love and hate this question.
I told you it was going to annoy you.
Okay, so there needs to be a difference between, we can sometimes see behavior. When we talk about behavior and sensory processing, we often mix the words together when we say behavior, emotional overload, all of those fun words. But there needs to be an understanding of, is their behavior telling me something that I'm missing, that they can't communicate, that they're not understanding themselves internally? Or is this behavior something that has helped them cope for a specific scenario that is now something they constantly do, right? Which we often see in school. We'll see in school, like, a teacher or whoever would be like, oh, whenever we have to do this child has this behavior every time. I don't understand why they do this. They keep doing this, etc., etc. So there's a beautiful phrase that we have in OT, which we call task analysis. So task analysis for me doesn't just talk about, it's in its name, task analysis. You analyze the task, you analyze everything about the task. So task being, what are the steps for a task? What the environment is the task in, and then what are the child's capabilities, and then you try and make everything match. Okay. For me, I use the same concept with behavior and sensory processing. When a child already has a sensory processing issue, often their behaviors are them communicating a need or communicating something to us when they can't communicate either verbally, either with gestures or whatever other way they want to communicate, or in a lot of instances, their behavior has been a way for them to cope with something, right? So what we, as their therapists, as their teachers, need to do is break down not just the behavior, when the behavior is happening, what are they doing in this behavior? What are they getting out of this behavior physically, internally? And what is the consequence of this behavior? Are they getting out of a task? Are they, Are they telling us that they want to do it this way? It's always our job to break down what it is. And there are other therapies that also, can deal with behavior, but behavior needs to be understood and not pushed down and corrected. Yeah. It's a communication from kids, and especially for our neurodiverse kids, that don't behave like other kids. Their brains work completely differently, so we cannot expect behavior to be the same. And a lot of the time as well, we need to think about other aspects. It's not just sensory, it's them also communicating. Like, if a kid is young and they are struggling with self-regulation, emotional regulation, of course they're going to, because they're young, right? Self-regulation is, and impulse control and all of those lovely words are executive functioning skills that develop in the prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortexes are only developed fully when we're 18 years old. There is no way that you should expect...
Sometimes not even.
There is no way that we should expect a child to have impulse control, cognitive flexibility when they are already neurodiverse. We know that there's going to be a delay in their executive functioning skills, and they're also trying to communicate things in a certain way. So yes, behavior can be sensory, but for me, behavior is always communication. I'm always trying to tell you something, or I'm asking you indirectly to understand me in this scenario at this task. And it's not going to be, for me, it's never a quick fix. And I always tell parents, I need to understand your child. I need to see them in every scenario. I need you to explain and think about everything. I need you to take a video, show me what's around you, so that I can get a full picture of the environment, of the occupation, which is the task, and of the child's state, right? So yes, there are often things, and like we've had so many situations where we've been like, okay, Beth's been like, okay, Steph, the child's doing this, tell me what they need. I'm like, okay, we're not sitting anymore. This child is telling us he needs more prep, he needs more vestibular. Yeah. Let us do an activity in standing against the wall. Activities get done that way then. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. He was just communicating to us that I just can't do this without movement. Right. He's not telling us I don't have the capacity to do this task. He's telling us that my brain needs more sensory input, so that I can reach the right arousal level for me to do this task. So, did I answer your question?
I think so, yeah. I just want to add on, fun fact, since understanding that, I have then, so one of the sessions that I now do moving around and standing up, which we always do that in like one part or two parts of a session. But for a particular child, for example, Steph suggested, because I said, look, he's not sitting down and he's just kind of like throwing things away from the table. And I don't understand if it's because he doesn't want to do it or he gets the nick out of the, do you know? Yeah. That. And so she was like, you need vestibular input and maybe you could do something standing up. And since then, this child has communicated vocally more. Yeah. than when we were just sitting, or when we were just like, I'm asking him to finish, or like, even if it's on a schedule, you know, sometimes they're like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's the same concept, the same goal in language development. I'm still working on his vocabs. I'm still working on independent communication, whereas I don't have to cue him to say what he needs. But we're moving more often, and we're doing it in ways when he can get to that right sensory arousal, or kind of like level to actually participate in the task. So that's like why it works hand in hand, you know, because then it frustrates me that he's not doing anything, or not, you know, achieving any of the goals I set.
Yeah.
Whereas it frustrates him that I'm not understanding why he's not doing that. So yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So those are our myths that we wanted to bust in this episode. And if there are any more myths that you want us to bust, let's do it in a reel, maybe, where we bust the myths.
Also, like, write to us, comment, or kind of like message us if there's a myth or something that you've been told that you want clarity on. Especially if you're a mom, a parent, a teacher, or any in the environment who has exposure to OT and speech and any other profession, you know, in the allied health. And maybe we can bust that myth for you. Yeah,
it's such a fun topic, and I think we'll probably do it again.
Yeah.
Because it was really hard for me to narrow down to two, but those were like my favorite two.
And I've just kind of like, from the last few weeks, the most of the questions that I get are this.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, that was fun.
Thanks for joining us for another episode. Stay tuned and follow us on our YouTube, Spotify, and Instagram for more tips, tricks, and more. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
Why do you always burp?
I know. And I don't know. Can you hear it from... I was going to say, I burped another... I'm very... Like, do you know?